Winter. That's in my opinion the most beautiful time of the year to visit Iceland, but it is also the most challenging one when it comes to travel and planning. And by the end of this video you'll know all the basics and tips that many people coming here don't even have, oftentimes leading them to regretting coming here during the winter in the first place. Because you see, winter in Iceland is a season of contrasts. You get this serene snowy landscape, soft light, pink skies, northern lights, but also very intense blizzards, road closures and winds that become one of the biggest memories you take away from the whole trip. And oftentimes you can even experience all of this in a single day. And that is actually the first thing that we need to get out of the way, because you see, winter in Iceland really isn't for everyone. The kind of person that will basically have the best time ever here during the winter is someone who can embrace the weather and sees it as a part of the whole experience. It is someone who is drawn to witnessing this raw beauty of Iceland wrapped in this winter coat and really wants this unfiltered experience of what is it like to be here during this time of the year. But if you absolutely hate cold weather, or let's say you are someone who gets upset if the conditions aren't 100% as advertised in like your favorite fashion magazine or whatever, then this might not be the best idea for you to come here during the winter, or probably ever. The next very important thing that we need to discuss basically before you even book your flights is which month to choose and how these winter months differ from each other, because that is something that will basically shape the entire course of your trip. And the reason that's so important is that during the winter, especially between November and late January, you can expect some pretty short days. For example, coming here in December versus visiting Iceland in like March will be entirely different experience, as you will see when we look at this chart of sunrise and sunset hours. And so check this out, in December as you can see there is way less sunlight, again for example compared to March. And obviously the main benefit of longer nights is a bigger window for northern lights hunting. But then limited daylight also means that you'll need to be more strategic about planning your daily trips. Simply put, you'll just have to be ready to skip some of the places and possibly visit some of them when it's basically getting dark. And that's basically why I often recommend setting out from your accommodation while it's still dark outside. So you sort of get ahead of time, and by the time you get to your first location, it will start to brighten up a little bit. For example, as I'm filming this video on November 5th, sunrise is around 9:30 AM. But it's not like it's pitch black outside till then. It slowly starts to brighten, roughly about 1 hour before sunrise. Of course, it is still very dark, but bright enough to see what is in front of you. And that means that basically like right now in November, you could probably start your day at like 8:30. But of course it will also depend on the weather, because when it's completely cloudy, it will take a little bit longer to get brighter outside, compared to when there is not a single cloud in the sky. Just think of it this way, basically during these short winter days that we have, I think it is very essential to just try to use every bit of this precious sunlight that we get. And so clearly some of these shortest months of the year could easily become a deal breaker for somebody who is hoping to be exploring since like early morning hours till late night. Another big difference between winter months is the weather. Early winter, like October and November, is sort of a mix of the seasons. And each year is a little bit different. But just to give you an example, a few days ago, everything was completely covered in snow. And right now, just a few days later, we are seeing temperatures over 10 degrees Celsius. In this specific time of the year, it is very difficult to predict what kind of weather you will have. Because you can really have everything from like full on winter, autumn to like mixture of both. Late November and December though, that's when winter really settles in, and you can definitely expect some snow and below freezing temperatures. From January to March it's much the same, and by April it already leans more towards spring. Though there is always a chance of some fresh snow, especially in the northern regions. And it is also worth keeping in mind that Iceland's north and south have completely different weather patterns. Of course, you can experience snowstorm in every part of Iceland, but generally said, more north you go, usually the colder it is, and also you will see more snow there. Just to give you an example, I live in north of Iceland, and when we get a very strong snowstorm, which let's say brings us like 1 meter of fresh snow, then at the same time, south of Iceland might experience only like a couple of centimeters of fresh snow. And that brings me to a very important point, because snow will definitely limit where you'll be able to go. Because many of these places that are very easy to reach in the summer, oftentimes become inaccessible or very challenging to get to in the winter. For example, a lot of these sites require at least a short walk to reach, and while that's not a problem if you get like, a couple of centimeters of fresh snow, if you have like knee-deep snow, that just becomes way too challenging, and in my opinion it just isn't worth it, and it also might be dangerous, especially if you are not like an agile person. And of course, if there is a place that you would love to visit, but there is some hike leading to it, add it to your list of things you want to see, definitely, there's no problem, but look at it more like a, would be nice to visit rather than making it the main objective for the day. And then once you are in Iceland, you can basically decide whether it would be possible to visit or not based on how much snow there is in that very moment. And it is also worth noting that south of the island is generally a little bit more forgiving when it comes to how much snow there is. But in other areas like mountains of East Fjords, then North Iceland, West Fjords, it's usually a completely different story. And it doesn't only apply to individual places of interest, but also to the roads. You see, many roads close entirely for winter, and so it is very important to keep that in mind before planning. And also one thing that you definitely need to know is that if that road is marked as closed, basically, if you go there, it is completely your responsibility, everything that happens. And if your car breaks down or you get stuck, then that whole mission for someone to go there and recover that car, you have to cover all of it. And there is no insurance that really applies for that. And trust me, these kinds of things can get pretty expensive. When we look at the map of road.is, the official website of Icelandic Road Administration, you can see that many of the roads have been already closed now in November. Mainly those in highlands or roads leading across the mountains. This website is basically something that you will want to check all the time, especially in the mornings before you head out somewhere. Outside of the road conditions, another important website that I usually check at least twice a day is the website of Icelandic Meteorological Office weather.is. This website is also in English, and in my opinion it is the most accurate forecast that you can use for Iceland. And so please just forget any other forecasting website that you normally use at home and just try to use this website, and only rely on the information that you find there. And the weather leads us to another key question that we need to answer for your planning. And that is something that so many people ask me. Jan, do I need 4-wheel drive or is a 2-wheel drive car enough for the winter here? And I just want to be very clear here, don't even think about it twice and just rent a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Because trust me when I say that this is the area of planning where you definitely don't want to try save some money. The road conditions here can be quite dangerous. You get ice, snow, strong wind gusts and coastal roads with no barriers. And sure, there is a chance that you'll come here and there won't be a single spot of ice on the road. And you'll question why the hell did you even rent a 4-wheel drive car? But then the main question is, do you really want to risk it? Speaking from my personal experience here, I have lived here for so many years now, and having a 4-wheel drive vehicle in the winter has saved my ass so many times I cannot even count it. And so it is very important, especially for those of you who have no previous experience with driving in snow. And so having a 4-wheel drive vehicle will basically help you to get a little bit extra confidence and will also help to keep you and other drivers a bit safer on the road. And I actually have a video on my channel about winter driving in Iceland, and so you can probably go and watch that later, and I think that it should answer some other questions that you may have about this topic. And now let's move on to something a little bit more fun, and that's winter activities. One thing that you need to know here is that many tour operators close for the winter completely, and so when you are browsing for things to do, you just have to keep in mind that some of these activities are summer only. But the good news is that there's still plenty of other things that you can do and experience here during the winter. And so if you're looking for a guided tour, there's plenty of options, and for example, you can go whale watching, you can go snowmobiling, dog sledding, visit ice caves, join a super jeep tour, or go skiing in the resort, heli skiing, ski touring, and way more. And if you prefer to explore solo, you can go hunt northern lights, visit waterfalls, explore beautiful coastal areas and snow-covered towns, and end your day with soak in a hot spring or one of the man-made lagoons. And all of these hot springs and lagoons also make for a great backup plans if the weather is bad. And it is not just hot springs, like you have so many other indoor options that are great when the weather is bad, like for example visiting museums and all these interactive exhibitions, and then you have places like Fly Over Iceland in Reykjavik, or like Lava Show in Reykjavik or Vik, and so on. And by the way, you can find all of these activities along with the most beautiful places to visit and hot springs, restaurants and unique places to stay in my guide, which is a tool specifically designed for those of you who want to find places you wouldn't normally find in all the mainstream guides. And so this is basically the best place to start planning your trip, but I don't really want to rant about it too much, and so I'll just leave the link in the description below and you can go and check it out later, and feel free to send me a message if you have any questions. Now, accommodation wise, options are a little bit more limited compared to summer months, especially for smaller Airbnbs, summer houses and so on. With that said, there is still a good range of accommodations available, and that is also because the winter is just much quieter time of the year and the bookings aren't as tight. Personally, I would just recommend keeping it simple and just book everything through these trusted biggest sites like booking.com or Airbnb, or even book it straight through the hotels. And if you are planning sleeping in the van, you should also keep in mind that only some of these campsites stay open all year round. And one tip that I want to give you is that when you are choosing the place, when there is a place that has a hot tub, prioritize that, and trust me, you will thank me later. Alright, so before we move on to the last point, I just very quickly want to go through everything we spoke about. First of all, remember, always check the sunrise and sunset hours for the month that you are visiting, and that will basically help you to structure the whole day properly. Point number 2, rent a 4-wheel drive vehicle and don't even think about it. And also remember to always check road conditions and weather forecasts at all times. Point number 3, don't forget to book some of the winter guided trips, because trust me when I say that only driving around and hopping in and out of the car, it sort of gets tiring after a while. And so being able to get some experience that you wouldn't normally be able to get on your own is definitely a huge plus. Point number 4, if you can, book an accommodation that has a hot tub, because when you come back to your accommodation, if there was not a single hot spring on your way, you'll be all frozen and stuff, and if you get to hop into the hot tub and just relax, it will definitely make your day. And remember, embrace the experience no matter what the island throws at you, because remember, when you come back home, you'll most likely remember those moments like when you got your car stuck or you experienced heavy snowstorm, rather than the day when you were just comfortably sitting somewhere in the pool. And the topic of discomfort sort of leads me to the last point, which is something that so many people actually underestimate, and that's clothes. And as you probably understand by now, winter in Iceland is beautiful, but it isn't always sunshine and rainbows. It's more like wind, snow and frozen fingers. And interestingly, like, people who are living in the countries that are actually colder than Iceland have oftentimes told me that somehow the Icelandic cold is just, it feels like harsher, it just feels like it's colder than it actually should be. And so if you imagine that you are dressing up for the winter, just remember that just dress as you normally would, but add a couple of extra layers. But this is quite a large topic, which I actually decided to dedicate a whole separate video for, and where we can actually dive into more details. And when that video is ready, it will pop up somewhere up here, but till then you can probably go and watch this video right here about driving in Iceland in the winter, and I hope to see you there. Cheers!